before we even start this, let me, because I know for sure that no matter what I do, my words are going to be twisted out of context. So before I begin this, let me put on the record what my feelings about Israel are. Right. So first of all, let me put on the record that I have a great amount of admiration and respect for Israel and the Israeli people. I mean, what's not there? What's not to admire and respect them about, right? First of all, why do I admire Israel and the Israeli people? First of all, they have succeeded in overcoming the incredible atrocity of the Holocaust. Yes, which happened during the Second World War in Europe, which was done by the Nazis. Yes, they were able to overcome that at great, great expense, personal expense. Yeah, so many Jews were murdered. It was a genocide, and the Israelis, the Jewish people, they started afresh in a new place, the promised land, the ancient promised land, the ancient land of Israel, right? So one must admire them for that, and one admires them not just for that, and not just for surviving in this place, but also thriving in a very bad neighborhood. Look at the kind of neighbors Israel has. They have not just survived; they have thrived there despite incredible odds, despite multiple major wars and multiple major conflicts since 1947. They have always been under siege. They have been surrounded by enemies, and yet they have thrived there, not just survived. And they have exhibited strong leadership, tough leadership, firm leadership. One must respect them for cherishing and reviving their culture. I mean, they have been drifting around for nearly 2,000 years, ever since the Romans took over Israel, that region. Yeah, so they have cherished their culture, they have revived their culture, they have pride in their culture, they revived the Hebrew language. It's something India is still struggling with. What is the Indian civilization language? We have been unable to revive Sanskrit. Yeah, and the Israelis have been able to do that. So one admires and respects them for that, and obviously I admire and respect them for excelling in so many different fields, in so many different domains, in technology, in information technology, cyber security, in the military domain, in geostrategy, in agriculture, in commerce, even in tourism. They've established themselves as a great tourism hub. It's a nation of entrepreneurs. It's a nation of very high standards. Israelis have a great amount of chutzpah, of tachles. They have this attitude called tachles and so on. There is so much India can learn and should learn from Israel. So I have the greatest amount of admiration and respect for Israel for all these things and much more. Yeah. And of course, we know that Israel is one of India's most important geopolitical, geostrategic relationships. India and Israel have a lot of things in common. I mean, we are collaborating and cooperating in the fields of security, in cybersecurity, in technology, information technology, in the military domain. We are developing various weapon systems together, like the Barak 8 missile system. In geopolitics and geostrategy, our interests are in a significant amount of alignment. Yes, in India and Israel are collaborating in agriculture, in commerce, and lots of Israelis come as tourists to India. Indians also go as tourists to Israel. So we have a very strong relationship, a very important relationship, and I am obviously very strongly in favor of robust India-Israel ties based on mutual interests, as it should be, right? And I would like to see the India-Israel relationship grow even stronger. So that is how I would like to preface what I'm going to discuss now, right? So please understand, I have the greatest amount of respect and admiration for Israel. Now let's talk about what happened. So let's put that on the screen now. So this is something that happened on this Monday. There was this film festival in Goa, in India, in which this person called Nadav Lapid was invited. He was the head of the international jury of this film festival, the International Film Festival of India in Goa, IFFI jury. So Nadav Lapid was invited, and he was made the head, the chief of the IFFI international jury. And in his capacity as chief, he made certain comments about an Indian movie, the Kashmir Files. He called it. He said that this is a propaganda movie. It is vulgar, and when you say that something is propaganda, you're saying that it's lies. So the historical events depicted in the movie are lies, right? He said it was vulgar propaganda and so on and so forth. He made certain very crude, not crude, but unfortunate remarks, and he made these remarks in the presence of a senior Indian minister, high-ranking Indian minister, Mr. Anurag Thakur, the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, and also in the presence of Mr. Naor Gilon, the ambassador of Israel to India and Sri Lanka. Yeah, so this happened on November 29. Yes, and in response, Mr. Naor Gilon put out a tweet thread, a response. But first of all, we have to understand that one cannot blame the Israelis for what happened. I mean, the Israeli government and the Israeli people did not decide to send Naor Gilon to India and appoint him as the chief or the head of the jury. It was the Indian government that invited this person. And a simple Google search could tell you what kind of background and antecedents this person has. He is, well, what you could call in India, the term is anti-national. He is an Israeli anti-national. He supports the Palestinian cause and he is anti-Israel. He is very critical about Israel's policies and is critical of the Israeli government and the direction Israel is taking. So it was very clear what kind of political ideology and background he has, what we call the left liberal ideology, yes. So it was very clear. A simple cursory search online, a background check, could have told the government of India what kind of person this gentleman is like. Apparently it was not done, or maybe it was done and still he was invited, and not only invited but put on the jury and made the head of the jury. It is extremely disappointing what's happened, and this is a major failure on the part of the Indian government. It has to be criticized most strongly, right? It's a huge failure. This amounts to a security failure. This has impacted India-Israel relationship, the India-Israel ties, right? And it's not the fault of the Israelis that this happened. It's the fault of the Indian government. I'm not sure who's responsible for this. So when you don't know who is responsible for something which went wrong, the buck stops at the top, right? So who is the head of the relevant ministry? It's Mr. Anurag Thakur. So one has to place the responsibility at his doorstep. So I'm not saying he is to blame, but it is at the end of the day his responsibility, and at the end of the day it's the Prime Minister's responsibility when something goes wrong or something goes well. So I think the Indian government has messed up very badly, and no matter how much criticism you give them, it's less, because this sort of thing should never have happened. The due diligence was not done. If it was done, then it was suppressed, and this person was still made the head of the jury. And then he went ahead and did what he did. Huge failure. Very disappointing. So whoever is, I'm sure lots of people are criticizing the Indian government for this, and the criticism is well deserved. Now let's go to what the Israeli ambassador said. So first of all, that's what this person, Navid Lapid, that's what Nadav Lapid said about the movie. And then he went ahead and said that the film has fascist features. That's what he said later. And then he also said that I stand behind every word I said about Kashmir Files. Nadav Lapid, he said this to various Indian journalists, right? That's what happened. So now the Israeli ambassador put out this big rebuttal on Twitter, this Twitter thread. So let's just quickly read it out. It's not very long, and let's understand what he is saying here. Open letter to Nadav Lapid following his criticism of the movie. It's not in Hebrew because I wanted our Indian brothers and sisters to be able to understand. It's also relatively long, so I'll give you the bottom line first. You should be ashamed, Nadav Lapid. Here's why. In Indian culture, they say that a guest is like God. You have abused in the worst way the Indian invitation to chair the panel of judges at the festival, as well as the trust, respect, and warm hospitality they have bestowed upon you. Our Indian friends brought Leo Raz and Avi Zakhariov from Fauda Official in order to celebrate the love in India towards Fauda, the TV series, the web series, and Israel. I suspect this is maybe one of the reasons they invited you as an Israeli and me as the ambassador of Israel. I understand your need in retrospect to justify your behavior. But I can't understand why you told Ynet News afterwards that the minister and I said on stage there is similarity between our countries because we fight a similar enemy and reside in a bad neighborhood. We did speak about the similarities and closeness between our countries. The minister spoke about his visits to Israel, it being a high-tech nation, and the potential of combining this with the film industry. I spoke about the fact that we grew up watching Indian films. I also said we should be humble when India, with such a great film culture, is consuming Israeli content, Chavda, and more. I am no film expert, but I do know that it's sensitive and presumptuous to speak about historical events before deeply studying them, and which are an open wound in India because many of the involved are still around and still paying a price. As a son of a Holocaust survivor, I was extremely hurt to see reactions in India to you that are doubting Schindler's List, the Holocaust in verse. I unequivocally condemn such statements. They say there is no justification. It does show the sensitivity of the Kashmir issue here. From your interview to Ynet, the connection you make between your criticism of Kashmir files and your dislike of what's happening in Israeli politics was quite evident. My suggestion, as you vocally did in the past, feel free to use the liberty to sound your criticism of what you dislike in Israel, but no need to reflect your frustration on other countries. I am not sure that you have enough factual basis to make such comparisons. I know I don't. You will go back to Israel thinking that you are bold and made a statement. We, the representatives of Israel, would stay here. You should see our DM boxes following your bravery and what implications it may have on the team under my responsibility. The friendship between the people and the states of India and Israel is very strong and will survive the damage you have inflicted. As a human being, I feel ashamed and want to apologize to our hosts, India, for the bad manner in which we have repaid them for their generosity and friendship. All right. So that's what Mr. Naor Gilon, the ambassador of Israel to India, said on Twitter. And then there were the official Twitter account of Israel itself said that to all our friends in India, please read this important thread. And there were other reactions as well. Maya Kadosh, who is an Israeli diplomat and former DCM at the Israeli embassy in India, said that, dear friends in India, from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. Tamar Schwarzbad, who is head of digital operations of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel, also said that Israelis love and respect our Indian brothers and sisters. No one can change that. Daniel Carmon, the former ambassador, said something to the same effect, and so on and so forth. So that's what has happened. Now let's understand what the Israeli ambassador is saying over here in this Twitter thread. I read the entire thing out. There are 4 or 5 major points that he is making. First of all, he's telling this person, Nadav Lapid, that you should have been a good guest. You have been invited as a guest, and when you go as a guest to somebody's house, even if you disagree with them, you don't say it openly. You are polite. You refrain from saying things that your hosts would not like. So Naor Gilon is telling Nadav Lapid that you should have been a good guest. You have been a bad guest. That's the first thing. Secondly, he said that India is consuming a lot of Israeli TV content, movie content, like Chavda, the series, which is very popular in India, and so on and so forth. So because India is consuming so much Israeli content, you should have been more humble, because now Indians may not watch all this stuff and it's going to affect us, right? It's going to affect our bottom line. It's going to affect our profit. I mean, the popularity of Israel in India. It's said over here. Yes. Then he refers to unspecified. The ambassador refers to unspecified historical events. Yeah. He talks about that. He says that it's an open wound, but he refrains from referring to and recognizing these events as a genocide. So he doesn't say that. And then he says that I am hurt as a son of a Holocaust survivor. I'm hurt that some people in India are reacting by doubting the events of the movie Schindler's List and by doubting whether the Holocaust happened or not. And he's unequivocally condemning such statements made by Indians. He's saying there is no justification for such statements made by Indians. And then he says that the Kashmir issue is sensitive. Yeah. So essentially, the Israeli ambassador is calling out Nadav Lapid for being a bad guest. He's saying your behavior has been bad. Your behavior was ungracious. He does not, the Israeli ambassador does not refute Nadav Lapid's claim that the movie was propaganda. The Israeli ambassador says that the Kashmir issue is a sensitive issue, but he does not recognize or deny India's assertion that Kashmir is an integral part of India. Right? So understand what the Israeli ambassador is saying and what he is not saying. He is calling out Nadav Lapid for his behavior, but he is not refuting Nadav Lapid's claim that the film was propaganda. He is condemning various Indian reactions on Twitter and social media that are doubting Schindler's List and the Holocaust, and so on and so forth. And he is not recognizing or denying India's assertion that Kashmir is an integral part of India, and he is not recognizing what happened in Kashmir and the event of the Kashmir Files movie as genocide. Understand this. Right? This is how diplomacy works, and this is the Israeli position. You can see the Israeli position in this Twitter thread. Now, you just saw it. Here is something that happened the very next day. So please understand that there is something called the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. It's observed on November 29. Yeah, this is an event, a day that is organized by the United Nations itself. It's a UN organized observance. So November 29 is the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people on the occasion of that day, which happened to be the very next day after this person's comments. So on the next day, the Indian embassy in Palestine put out this tweet message of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, on the occasion of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And there's a message, in which India says that we have India's ties with the friendly people of Palestine are rooted in our common history. We have always supported the Palestinian people in their pursuit of economic and social development with dignity and self-reliance. We are hopeful that direct talks between the Palestinian and Israeli sides will resume to find a comprehensive and negotiated solution, and so on and so forth, like I love to say. So over here, India says that we support the Palestinian people in their pursuit of economic and social development with dignity and self-reliance. India is not saying in this statement that we support the freedom of Palestine. Right? So there is support, but there is limited support. So that is the statement that India made the very next day, which happened to be the appropriate day for making the statement. So it's not in retaliation or response to what happened. But it's also interesting to note that this statement, this message is dated November 2. So clearly the Prime Minister, this message was formulated a few weeks before the event, and it was signed on November 2, and then it was released on November 29. Yeah. So you can see that India does not recognize Palestine as an independent state or does not support freedom for Palestine, but we support the economic and social development of the Palestinian people with the dignity and self-reliance. Yeah. So that is interesting messaging coming out the very next day. So what we can see here is that there is clear divergence in both nations' views. Yes, Israel does not recognize or deny India's assertion that Kashmir is an integral part of India, which means that Israel doesn't want to comment about the matter. I'm not sure what kind of maps the Israelis put out, world maps or Asia maps, and I wonder what kind of boundaries it shows there. I suspect it would be very similar to what kind of boundaries the Americans recognize, when it comes to Kashmir. So the Israelis don't recognize or deny. They have not made a statement of recognizing or denying India's assertion that Kashmir is an integral part of India, and they are not recognizing the fact that what happened in Kashmir was a genocide. The ambassador to India did not refute Nadav Lapid's claim that the film was propaganda. There is divergence in the views of both the nations. Both the nations know it. Both the nations recognize it. And both the nations work together despite these differences because we have much stronger shared interests. But please remember, my dear friends, viewers, that the India-Israel relationship is not driven by love or friendship or brotherhood or shared values or shared culture. There is this incredible, fantastical belief in India, among the Indian people, that the Israelis and the Jews love India. You know, there must be many Jews and Israelis who like India. No doubt about it. There must be many. And there may be a small minority of them who may possibly love India. But the truth is that most Israelis and Jews overall are at best indifferent about India or towards India. Understand that. There is this incredible delusion in India that most Israelis and most Jews love India the way Indians love Israel. This is delusion. This is a delusional belief, right? It is not the case. Now, we have seen the example of one person, Nadav Lapid, who clearly is very strongly anti-India. He comes to India as an honored guest, and then he indulges in this sort of behavior. Well, I assure you, he is not the only person who is an India hater or strongly anti-India. There are many such people. Like in any nation, there will be anti-nationals and people like that. So there will be many other Israelis also like this. Let me give you a different example, a historical example of not somebody who's anti-India, but a different kind of person. So first of all, you all know, I hope you all know, if you've been watching my channel, about what happened to the Romani people at the same time as the Holocaust was happening in Europe. The Nazis, under the direction and leadership of the very evil person Adolf Hitler, murdered I don't know how many million Jews. We know that. This was an extermination program. It was a genocide. And this did not happen only to the Jewish people. It happened to the Romani people as well. The Romani people are of Indian origin. They're Indian origin people who live in Europe, who have been persecuted horribly in Europe for 1,000 years. Incredible racism and persecution against them, which still continues today. The Romani people. So the Romani people were also targeted for annihilation by the Nazis, because the Romani people represented the inconvenient fact that the true Aryans are not white people with blue eyes and blonde hair. The true Aryans are brown people, like the Indians and the Iranians. Right? So the Nazis sought to exterminate the Romani people as well. This is a fact. See that on the screen. Historical amnesia, the Romani Holocaust. And we don't even know how many Romani people died, because nobody has bothered to look into this matter, because the Romani people are brown people. They don't matter. They are gypsies, right? So a whole range of figures are thrown around, from 20,000 to 200,000 to 2 million. We don't know how many people died, because no historian has really bothered to investigate this properly, systematically, with facts and data. But it is a fact there was a horrific Holocaust of the Romani people as well, right? The Romani people call it the Porajmos or the Kalitras or whatever. They have their own word for what happened to them. It was horrific. There are so many stories in there which I will not go into today, but there was a Romani Holocaust. Now, there is a section of Jewish people, not only Israelis, but Jewish people, who belong to what is called the Uniqueness Camp. The Uniqueness Camp. The Uniqueness Camp is a school of Jews who have the view that the Nazi genocide of the Jewish people was unique, and that the killing of the Gypsy people was a mere afterthought, which means that the Jews are special, and the real thing, the main thing was the unique thing was the killing of the Jews, and the killing of the Gypsies was merely an afterthought. It is not to be taken very seriously. This is called the Uniqueness Camp. And the proponent of the Uniqueness Camp was a person called Eli Weisel or Weisel. I don't know what the pronunciation is. It's not important. Who was Eli Weisel? Eli Weisel was the face of the Holocaust. He was an extremely famous and prominent writer, professor, political activist, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. Right? He authored 57 books and so on. He was a Romanian American writer, professor, and so on and so forth. So this person was the originator of the Uniqueness Camp. And the thing about this person, he is an extremely famous person. He wrote so many books. People repeat his quotes even today. I am sure even I must have put up one or two of his quotes on my Twitter account. Very influential person, very famous person. And he tried to suppress what happened to the Gypsy people. Yeah, here's an article here. The Nazis' extermination of Gypsies was nearly as complete proportionally as the Nazis' extermination of European Jews. And yet the commemoration of the Gypsy victims of the Holocaust has never come even close to the memorialization of Jewish victims. And this is a well-known fact. And the principal opponent of this was Eli Weisel, right? Here is an the Gypsies were lobbying for representation on Holocaust Memorial Council in 1986 in the United States. And this council was, I believe at one time headed by this person, Eli Weisel, a Jewish person. This is an article by Ian Hancock, the first Romani person to ever acquire a PhD, in which he speaks about the role of Eli Weisel in all this. Yeah. Weisel has steadfastly maintained an exclusivist position regarding the definition of the word Holocaust, interpreting it as referring to the fate of the Jewish victims alone, and so on. He has the word has never once been used in the council's or the museum's documentation in connection with the Romani people, not even in the program for the Romani Day of Remembrance, and so on, and so on. So this person tried to suppress what happened, and he has, see, the main thing is that victimhood is privilege, and Eli Weisel was of the opinion that the Jewish people are the privileged people, and the Romani people do not deserve any commemoration and any recognition of what happened to them. And the consequence of that is that we still don't know to what extent the Romani people were exterminated in Europe during the Holocaust, during the genocide that was perpetrated by the evil Nazis. Yes. So this is one example. I am not saying all Jews are like this, but please open your eyes to the fact that there are all kinds of people in the world. Right? And there is this camp, this school of thought among the Jews, this Uniqueness Camp, that the world must only commemorate what happened to the Jews and forget about what happened to the Romanis. The killing of the Gypsies, the Romanis, was a mere afterthought. It is not very important. Yeah? The Jews are privileged, others are not. I am sure there are lots of people in Israel and Jewish people who do not agree with this, but please understand that there are all kinds of people in the world, even among the Jewish people whom India loves very well, and most of whom are wonderful people. Yeah. So this is something I thought I should share with you, because it is important for Indians to have a 360-degree perspective of the world, not a monochromatic perspective of the world. Indians are incredibly emotional people, and they see things through emotions only, right? So what I would like to say is that the India-Israel relationship is a very strong partnership. It is driven by significant convergence of interests. Each nation has a lot to offer to the other that the other desires. There is immense potential for both nations to work together for mutual benefit because of our shared interests, and not because of love or friendship or brotherhood or shared values or shared culture. It's not about love, it's about realism. Yeah. And when you see affirmations by Israeli diplomats and certain people that of love and brotherhood about our Indian brothers and sisters, these messages are exclusively aimed at the Indian audience. It is not aimed at the Israeli audience, because unlike Indians, the Israeli audience is not emotional. It is not swayed by sweet talk. The Israelis are pragmatic and realistic people. Right? So all these statements that you will see in public are aimed at the Indian audience, because the Israelis know that the Indians love this sort of sweet talk. Indians fall for it very easily. I'm not saying the Israelis are trying to mislead you or misguide you or anything, but they know what works and they use it. Why not? And I can assure you that there will be some Israeli YouTubers who will strongly disagree with me. I'm not naming anybody. I don't even watch any of them. I'm aware of 2 or 3 of them. Yeah. Look, they are doing work, which is good work, I'm sure. But I assure you there will be some Israeli YouTubers who will strongly disagree with what I am saying. The reason for that is that they depend on Indian views. And they have to say this thing, that Israelis love India. The truth is, most Israelis are completely indifferent towards India at best. And I see all these reactions on social media from Indians saying that we love Israel, India, Israel brotherhood is forever, and I can give my life for Israel, and I don't know what else, what not this day. Please understand that the only nation you should love is your own nation. And the only flag you should have on your social media accounts is your own flag. Have some self respect, and please be realistic about the world. That's all I would like to say to Indians. It's really frustrating to see this, but yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk about for from the about this particular incident. Like I have said, I have the greatest amount of admiration and respect for Israel, right? For what they have achieved, for what they stand for. There is a lot that India can and should learn from Israel. Indians as individuals, as people, India as a society, as a nation, as a culture, can learn a lot from Israel. But we have to be realistic about India-Israel ties. It's not, these ties are based on realism, on shared interests, not on love and brotherhood and whatnot Indians think it is, right? So please understand this.